I mean, for Christ's sake, Pino, they grew up on my food. On my food. And I'm very proud of that. Well, you may think it's funny, but I'm very proud of that.
Hello and welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where this week we're continuing our exploration of Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. My name is Steve Morris. I am a filmmaker and directing instructor in Los Angeles, California.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Roca. I'm a writer, producer, and host here in San Diego, California, voiceover artist and mad lover of Spike Lee and this movie, Do the Right Thing.
It is a fantastic movie, and we couldn't talk about it without our fantastic guest.
Yes, our fantastic guest who is returning, founder of Four Horsemen Films. He's a writer, director, actor, voiceover artist, personal friend of mine, and a guy I've hosted shows with before, way in the past times, and we're excited to have him back again. Andre Gordon, how are you, Andre?
Guys, so good to be here again. So happy to be with you guys again. But you're lovers of the movie. I fell in love with it again. I fell in love with it. Forgot how great it is, how complex and simple it is all at the same time. Can't wait to get into the rest of this movie.
Well, I think we should just jump right back in. Where we left off, we had just seen, I think, the most fun part of the film, which is we had the fire hydrant open, kids were playing in the water, and then this gentleman came in with his convertible. Things didn't go that well for him. He tried to talk to the cops. That didn't work out very well either. And now we're going to be back at Sal's. And what is Sal doing? He's on the phone, and I didn't catch this at first.
He left there about a half hour ago. Oh, that's nice. No problem. Thank you. Yeah, half hour, right.
And what he's clearly doing is checking up on Mookie.
Yeah.
Where the hell you been, Mookie? I got a business to run, okay?
I don't think Mookie is the best of employees. You know, something I was thinking about that I kept meaning to bring up is that these characters are so symbolic and their names are so symbolic. Because in addition to Mother, Sister, and Demare, we have a guy with a big radio named Radio Raheem. We have a guy who keeps getting angry named Bugging Out. And do you think that Mookie's name is connected to Mooch? Or
That's what I thought.
Yeah. I'm wondering if that's the intention, because that's what it makes me think of.
I'd have to agree with you. When I heard, initially, I didn't think about it when I was, 16, 17, but going back and rewatching it as an adult and then watching it again now, Mookie, Moocher, and then his whole disposition and attitude towards his employer, which I thought was quite interesting that Spike Lee wrote. A sense of entitlement to all the characters, even though they're in an underprivileged neighborhood. Everyone seems to have some sort of entitlement issue. And I really found that interesting. They typically, society talks about entitlement for the rich white, but you can see Mookie feels like he could just take off work and take a shower and go do whatever he wants. And then, you have the sons who have a sense of entitlement. I just thought that was a really interesting dynamic. But yes, Mookie, interesting.
Yeah, the different points of views going on here with this situation, right? Because, I mean, obviously you're looking at it as three of us who are hardworking blue-collar dudes, looking at a guy like this, we're like, hey, man, you can't be running off for half an hour or whatever. Like, people depend on getting these things delivered and whatever. And clearly this has been a problem with Mookie since the beginning. But Mookie feels like, hey, the neighborhood is my neighborhood, so I can do what I want in my neighborhood. He has that weird kind of sense of entitlement as well in that way. But yeah, this is what Steve touched on in the last episode, this idea of how Spike Lee has no problem putting himself as these characters that are not that sympathetic, and they take advantage of situations for their own benefits. And certainly throughout this whole movie, there are numerous examples of Mookie overstepping his bounds and also doing what he wants to do regardless of what anyone thinks, and claiming that he's got stuff on he's going to figure it out. He's got stuff he's working on stuff. He's going to get stuff. Don't you worry. And I think there's a bit of, distaste for that when you're watching it in the movie.
I think I 100% agree. By the way, there are weird things happen when you're making movies. And one of the things happen when they're shooting this scene is the prop guys only managed to get 2 pizzas. And so they had to reuse the pizzas, which means they couldn't cut the pizzas, which means if you watch John Turturro slicing that pie in the background, he is not slicing the pizza. The little cutting tool is like hovering above the pizza, and he's faking it. And apparently Turturro was so pissed that he was furious that he had to, like, let me just cut the pizza. How can I do this? And it's so one of those things where, like, once you see it, you can't not see it.
Yeah.
But Vito decides to go with Mookie on the delivery to Senior Love Daddy, and I think this is one of the most interesting relationships in the film.
Vito, I know Pino's your brother and shit, but you should kick his ass.
In a way, once again, this is what I mean. Mookie kind of overstepping these bounds a little bit, and you get it because they're boys, they're friends and whatever. So he's trying to tell him, "Hey, don't do this, don't do that." And Mookie, probably not the most emotionally intelligent guy, inserting himself in between brothers, two Italian brothers, no less. That's not a good thing you want to do because it can be an explosive situation. But it's no different than what Pino is trying to do to Vito by trying to convince him to go against Mookie. So, he's getting torn by both sides in this situation here. And it's a little corruptive of Mookie to do this, to try to kind of put him on his side and then tell him the next time he does anything, you should slap him in the face. It's just like, what are you doing? Why are you trying to instigate violence between two brothers here? Let them handle it. It's none of your business.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting about that, John? What's interesting is how he reacts to each character. So he says to Mookie, "Oh, you really think that would help?" At one point, like, he's going through it with him. But then when his brother is talking to him, he's like, "Well, you don't know him like I do." So
right.
He's defending Mookie.
Yeah.
But to his own brother, he's like, he's considering it. "Oh, you really think that could help?" So I thought that was interesting how Spike is showing the potential division between the brothers and, like you said, Italian brothers.
Yeah.
That's a tight master lock.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things, and I won't quite go as far as say this is a flaw, is we don't really see Pino beating up on Vito before this. You know what I mean? So, like, there's not a lot of reason why Mookie's saying it at this point. But what I do think is interesting is that I think Mookie and Vito is, to whatever degree is possible, a friendship.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think because we've had this time with Pino to see his reactions to things, the fact that Mookie alludes to a possible physical stuff between them in the past with Vito and Pino is not out of the realm of possibility. We kind of accept it as, yep, sure, that seems to make sense.
By the way, they just gave Samuel L. Jackson a bunch of hats and different outfits, and it's just so funny to be thinking about, like, where his career goes. And this is a guy that loves clothes, and right now he's got a pith helmet on. And I love too that it gives you such a sense of community that he's talking on the radio about how hungry he is, and here comes Mookie with food from Sal's Famous. It gives you this sense of everyone is sort of together.
Well, and I love that Senior Love Daddy is frustrated when he's watching Mookie and Mookie and Pino like going at, or Vito rather, going at each other there, having the conversation. He's waiting for his food. And he's just like, "Come on now." You can see him in the background gesturing like, "Give me my food," which is so funny. Such an extra. Most directors don't want a character in the background distracting from the scene that is happening. But that just adds to what's going on between them. It adds to the building tension here between the two, that they are having this argument at the expense of the hunger of Senior Love Daddy. So I love that.
Oh, and why is he waiting so long for the food? Because Mookie took a half hour to come back for the last delivery.
And it all goes back to, again, I always find writing, real great screenwriting is incredible to me. And Sal talks about, I watch these people grow up on my food. I take real great pride in that. And no matter how angry or happy, everybody in the entire community does love the food. So again, no matter what the situation is, someone's hungry, they're getting the pizza. They've established another store across the street where they could get food. But the food of choice is the pizza.
But by the way, am I the only one who kind of wants a slice of Sal's Famous?
Please.
Man.
I had 2 slices the other day. Come on.
I just had one. This got me on a pizza kick now.
New York pizza is like, so good. And I love, by the way, when we're in the radio station that Senior Love Daddy pushes Mookie to make a dedication, which he does to Tina. We are listening to some salsa music. We're with these the Puerto Rican guys who are sitting on a stoop. And then we hear Fight the Power. Yeah.
Yo, man, do that, man.
ask you this question. I don't want to ask. I'm not going to ask what you think of Radio Raheem yet. I'm going to hold that question for a bit. How do you feel about loud music coming into your space?
As an old man, I don't like it. As a young guy, I didn't mind it because it's part of the game. Because I could always turn my music up loud. I used to turn my music up loud, And I used to be one of those guys who would ride around with my music loud. And sometimes it was Public Enemy, no lie.
Sure.
In my little Hyundai Excel, trying to show everybody how cool I was. Those are those days back when you're young. That's what you do. So to me, that's what I loved about this character. Is I was like, oh, I know this guy. I've growing up in the 1980s, you see people who walked around with those boom boxes on their shoulders, were breakdancing, walking to the basketball court with the boom boxes, all that nice. So that was something that I definitely related to and knew. And this battle is so great and something that has happened and I've seen happen before where I grew up as well.
I'm with you, John. I remember being in my turbo diesel Mercedes Benz and turning up my tape deck all the way up. And my dad saying, son, you can't have the music so loud. I was like, you don't understand me. And now someone drives through my community with their music up. I'm outside with a baseball bat, like, who is this? Get off my lawn. It's funny how those tables turn. You're right. You guys are right. You hear the music now and you're like, ugh, get out of my space. But I was that guy. So, when you hear the music, automatically you're like, uh-oh, he's one of them. Hooligan.
Right. And this is what's so fascinating about watching the movie now. And we'll get into it more. So obviously as things get more heated, but I look at it completely different than I did when I saw it in 1989. I still appreciate how I saw it in 1989, but I have a lot more sympathy for other people that I didn't have sympathy for when I watched the movie as a young man. So I found that to be an interesting experience this time around. And yes, that situation, you're almost like Sal with the baseball bat. Turn off your fucking music.
I'm pretty much the same. I don't think I was never aggressively blasting my music. I liked loud music sometimes.
Yeah.
But like when you come, and if you're passing by, like if the car drives by with the loud music, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, right.
But if you come into a place where I can't get away and I'm just I have sensitive ears. You know what I mean? Like I don't want that. But as you say, John, what we're gonna get is a battle between the salsa music and Fight the Power. And I love the way it goes because Radio Raheem wins and they give it to him, you know?
Respect.
Yeah.
It's out of respect. But they still kind of walk down the block to retain their manhood, yelling stuff at him as Latinos do. And I say that from my own experience. But in the end, they had to give him pass, man, because his radio is just better.
Yeah.
And this, and I hated that. I used to have a terrible Emerson boombox that I'd walk around with. And then you see people with Sony, Panasonic boomboxes, and they would blow you out of the water. You would have to turn your shit down. I know that moment. So it was so great to see it in the film.
And the battle was really cool, too, because you almost get a sense of how their language towards each other, as violent, as vitriolic as it could be, as it is.
Yeah.
It's almost like, nothing comes to blows per se,
right.
But it's just like, it's just how it is. Well, we curse each other out and we yell, throughout the whole movie, people are cursing each other out without any physical recourse. I mean, until the end, but you know what I'm saying? It's just this weird, like, oh, this is the language of the block.
Yeah, of the block. Right, exactly. Yeah. And because both the Latinos or Puerto Ricans and Black people are trying to get their voices heard, trying to get their space, trying to claim their territory when there's so little territory that white people give them. There's this territory. So they got to be loud about it and defend it strongly, just like West Side Story in a way, defending your territory, defending your block. So, yeah.
I think that's a great point. It's like when you don't have that much, then this spot becomes real important.
Oh, yeah.
Mookie and Vito are talking some baseball, and then they run into Bugging Out.
You the man. No, you the man. No, you the man. No, you the man.
And again, I love everything Giancarlo says and the way he says it. No, I'm a struggling black man trying to keep my dick hard in a cruel and harsh world.
Please don't cut that out. Please leave that out.
You want me saying that?
Yeah, I want you.
Listen, if you say I guess I wanted to avoid that, right?
Yo, hey, what's up with the white boy?
And it's Mookie's now in the position of defending Vito.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand like there are parts of the movie that I had to grow into understanding. And one of them, because we've hear multiple times Bugging Out say to Mookie, "Stay black."
Yeah.
And here he is siding with the son of Sal's, in front of Bugging Out.
Let me ask you guys a quick question. Did you watch this movie with black people or with white people or Latinos?
Me, the first time I saw it was my best friend Maurice. You know Maurice, Andre. He's black, so that's who I saw it with the first time.
And did you feel as though you were like representing? Like, did you connect with him on the black perspective or the Italian perspective, or was it just objective as a filmmaker, as a film watcher?
Yeah, objective as a film watcher, because I'm not represented in the film because the Latinos, they're Puerto Rican, they're not South American. So for me, I'm seeing a version of the Latino experience, but I'm not really, because he doesn't make the Latinos a big part of the movie.
Right.
So it's very much black-white, what you're seeing in the movie. So for me, it was objective. And then the conversations with Maurice in the car afterwards. And by the way, we've spoken about this movie over the years multiple times and the stuff that goes on. And every once in a while, each one of us will watch it or whatever, and then text the other person and talk about it. So, and I've spoken with other people, and I think with you a couple of times we've had conversations, Andre, about the movie. So yeah, I've always spoken to people who are represented in the movie in a way and had conversations about it for sure.
What about you?
So I saw it in a crowded theater in Berkeley. And so I think it was a pretty mixed group. But I couldn't tell you, 33 years later who was in the movie theater. I never was like associating with Sal and the Italians, it was much more the objective, because that's what the movie is to me, is it's looking at all these things from all these different perspectives. And that's the way my brain works anyway. But then later on, particularly when I was working on this play, I did watch it with a bunch of African Americans and did have those same conversations, I'm sure, John, that you had about how they saw what they saw, And then after Mookie and Vito head away, a guy dressed in with a Larry Bird shirt and a bicycle goes by Bugging Out and rolls right over his brand new Jordans.
Yo!
And runs up to John Savage.
Yo!
It's a fantastic scene.
You almost knocked me down, man. The word is excuse me.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Not only did you knock me down, you stepped on my brand new white Air Jordans that I just bought. And that's all you can say is excuse me.
What's so odd about the scene is I find it really funny on one level. And then there's also things about it that's like, wow, how am I supposed to feel about this? One thing I did find out is apparently John Savage for years told people that jersey was given to him by Larry Bird. And that is a total lie. Spike, it was part of the wardrobe. Spike got it for him. He lied for like decades.
That's hilarious. That is hilarious. But what do you think he picked John Savage? What do you think there was here with him? And was there a connection was there anything you read or listened to where he said why he cast John Savage?
I didn't see anything. No, I mean,
interesting choice.
Why do you think it's an interesting choice?
Well, because he's not a really well-known person, but he did have, he was in was he in Deliverance or Deer Hunter? Which one was he in? He was in one of those, wasn't he?
He's not in Deliverance.
Okay. Maybe I'm wrong here, but I just thought he was like a 70s actor. Yeah, he's in the Deer Hunter. Right. He's in
I thought it was Deer Hunter.
Yeah, so I wonder if that's a bit of an homage maybe to him, or maybe he wanted to, and still working John Savage, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah, I thought it was such an unusual choice to pick him because he only has one scene, and it's that scene. So I wonder what was the motivation behind that. So
it exposed my bias because when you step on a black person's shoes, Jordans no less, and where I grew up, that's a fight for sure.
Oh yeah,
right. So then you have this one white guy standing his ground in a Larry Bird jersey amongst black people after he stepped on his shoes or rode over his shoes, and they're telling him, you got to mess this guy up. Hey, you can't let that, don't get punked. So I'm nervous. And I watched this movie with one of the whitest people in the world, Callie Smith. And so it was scary. I was nervous at the time.
So are you nervous that Bugging Out's going to kick his ass? Are you nervous? Like, what are you nervous about?
I was nervous they're going to stomp him into the ground, that he was going to be a little green spot on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
It's such a the scene gets more interesting the more I watch it, because again, I love listening to Giancarlo Esposito.
Yeah.
I think he's awesome. The language is great, but it's also interesting how the guys behind him are pushing him.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's bugging out ever get physical with anybody?
Nope. Not even at the
Nope.
end. Not even.
Has he in the past?
No.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I think he's a wuss and
Yep.
he's a loudmouth. And
Yep.
that's why the people surrounding him, which is I call the active Greek chorus in this whole entire movie, they're the ones. And look, if you grew up at this time, and maybe still the generations now, but like those moments happen where someone's like, "Yo, he says shit about your mama." He says,
Yeah.
they're always, and they're the ones who grow up and loving reality TV because they love to watch the instigation because they're not going to get involved. But they have no problem instigating you to get involved and you to have the repercussions and the consequences. So so it's up to you whether you want to listen to them or not. And the fact that bugging out immediately, and I've seen people do this when they puff up their chest, immediately start using excuses for not getting into the fight. That means they're wusses. And certainly bugging out, you lucky I'm a righteous black man. You lucky the righteous black man has forgiveness in the heart. That all of it is just to cover the fact that he doesn't have to actually have the balls to physically attack anybody for staining his or for scuffing up his Jordans. He just wants to yell. He's like a little dog yelping all the time, but actually can get thrown around by the bigger dogs.
I think John Savage plays this scene.
Oh my God.
Because there's so much about what he does that's interesting. Like the first thing is he does when he gets called on it, he gives an excuse me, but it's not a really good one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, oh, excuse me. And then you can see, and he doesn't back down.
No, he doesn't.
At all.
He doesn't get aggressive back.
Mm-mm.
And then you see the moments where his eyes start to kind of flit around and go, what's about to happen here?
Right.
And I love too, that as it escalates, that he owns the brownstone.
Who told you to buy a brownstone on my block, in my neighborhood, on my side of the street?
Well, as Andre said, this is where the script really shines, the back and forth here, right? Because you're right about this, Steve, pointing out the fact that John Savage is not intimidated until he realizes, okay, there's a growing crowd here. What's going to happen? But then he still picks up his bike and just calmly walk in and run up the stairs. Nope. He walks up the stairs. I love the first time Bugging Out confronts him. He wipes his head and has a smirk on his face. Like, what's the big deal? Like, what are you complaining about? Like, there are worse things in the world than the scuffing of your Jordans. But sure, let's talk about that. And so I like that he's got this. And he's not, you're right, he's not intimidated. He's not scared until he sees everything. And then he kind of walks up there. And then he has the back and forth. Look, there are plenty of white people in New York who stand their ground. They got no problem. They grew up there. They have generations there. They feel their bones. They're not intimidated by anybody. And I love that they showed that here. And Spike instigating us by putting him in a Celtics shirt is just nothing's more whiter than Larry Bird in the Celtics. It's just perfect.
Agreed. And then they go, why don't you move back to Massachusetts? And this moment is so great.
I was born in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
It's so theatrical. And this is one of the things I love about Spike Lee is that he's not afraid to make a moment be unrealistic in the way that it's staged like a musical moment, it's a stagey moment. And I love it. And this is the thing I was thinking about. One of the themes of this movie is property versus people. Is that we have the Italian guy with the convertible that gets hit with the water. Right. We have this scene, which is the value of my Jordans and whether or not that's worth violence. And then we're going to end up at Sal's.
Yeah.
And the building versus Radio Raheem. Speaking of Sal's, Vito and Mookie get back really quickly, strangely enough.
I should send Vito with you all the time.
Yeah, no more 90-minute deliveries around the corner.
Pino, I work hard like everybody else in here, all right?
You know that's true, Pino.
I don't think that's true.
Yeah, I don't think that's true at all either.
I mean, I think Pino hates the fucking place, but I think Pino works harder than Mookie.
Sure. Barely, but okay.
I have no evidence of this. Maybe it's pure racism on my part.
No, racist. Wow.
Finally comes out.
in between the pizza, he's complaining about the neighborhood all the time.
Yes.
It must be hours upon hours of complaining rather than working. So, yeah. I don't think there's a lot of work to be done, to be honest with you, in a pizzeria place like that. Because it seems like Sal's the one doing a lot of the cooking and the making of the pizza and whatever. I don't think Pino and Vito. I mean, I think Vito barely does anything in the whole movie. It's working at the actual place. So, yeah.
I also like the blue collar aspect of a pizza delivery guy on foot. Anytime you think of a pizza delivery guy, you think of a guy in his car rushing around, but he's walking it around the corner. It is kind of funny, isn't it? How he's just so, and he take 90 minutes, around the corner.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
does show his laziness.
And now Pino is on Vito.
What's going on between you two? You guys boyfriend and girlfriend or something?
What did we just talk about?
What?
Now we see sort of what Mookie was talking about before.
Just remember who you are, right? Your name is Vito Frangioni. Not Vito Muhammad.
Turturro is an unrecognized, brilliant part of this movie, to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, because he's such a goddamn good actor. And him delivering this line,
I would love for you to stay out of my business.
he did it in a soft way that was like, if I go any further, I'm going to throw hands. If I go any louder, I'm going to throw hands. And so the fact that he delivered it that way shows this growing anger or trying to be tough with Mookie. And I love that. Such a brilliant character acting decision in that moment.
I couldn't agree more. And it's not this is not necessarily a fun part to play.
No, right, exactly.
And I know that what it sounds like is, particularly right after this movie came out, John Turturro riding on the subway in New York got some flack, because people saw him as this character.
Yeah.
And then I think what Spike says is that later on that people embraced him, because he was part of this film.
Don't fuck me, all right?
And Pino heads back to the register and says,
I hate this place.
With true disdain.
Yeah.
I think this next sequence is so perfectly filmic. Which is, we see the cops in their car in slow motion, rolling through the neighborhood, looking at the guys on the corner. Spike said he wanted it to feel like a military occupation. I think that is exactly what it is. Yeah. And they stare back. The jazz piano playing is really powerful. And as they drive, they look so far back behind their shoulders at these guys. I worry they're going to hit something. And the last thing the cops say is,
What a waste.
What a waste.
I like that he uses the old jazz cue here because this is generational. Like the music he uses reflects how far back this kind of disdain from the black community, from the police to the black community and vice versa, has been around. And the fact that he uses the Latino guy, Miguel Sandoval, to say what a waste is interesting as well, and I find that all to be a fascinating dynamic in that scene. And slow motion is just brilliant. This is brilliant to use it this way.
And what's so great about it is, like, I go, what are these guys sitting on this corner for? I understand why the cops say what a waste, and I understand why the guys on the corner say what a waste.
Right.
And that is the genius of this film. And the next moment it's like this. It's sort of the same thing, which is,
Look at those Korean motherfuckers across the street. I bet you they haven't been off the boat a year before they open up their own place.
That's right, man. It's been about a year.
you turn so quickly in this movie.
Yeah.
And the next line is great.
Either them Korean motherfuckers are geniuses, or you black asses are just plain dumb.
How do you feel about this scene?
Andre? I defer to Andre on this one.
I think it's really funny that, the Korean, they say that the Koreans have come in and occupied this boarded up building, alluding to the fact that they'd rather have it boarded up than have them in here.
Oh, good
But
point.
but the Italians, they have the pizza shop, and the blacks are there. It's almost like the Koreans are seen as the other, like the subspecies, and but they say it's successful. So it's like this weird acknowledgement of, the preceding scene. We talk about what a waste, right? And he's juxtaposing people just sitting out in the corner doing nothing versus fresh off the boat, 1 year successful business. And I think that's a social commentary by Spike as well. Maybe I as a writer and as a black man, I think he say, hey, look what some cultures are doing and look what we do stereotypically. So I see the commentary in that. I found it interesting, but I also recognize that, dang, it's so true. there are some cultures who they come to the country. See, I wasn't born here either, so I think when you come to the United States, you're not coming for a vacation. You had to make it work, and he's showing the grit versus the entitlement and lazy attitude. So I thought that it was an honest depiction of what it could be.
This is one of the great things about this movie. It pulls no punches in showing you the incongruent parts of people's personalities, right? Because I mean, ML initially is going after the Korean grocers. And look, we saw this in Gangs in New York, and anyone who studies the history of immigrants to this country knows that the first immigrant group hates the next immigrant group and vice versa down the road. That's just how it works. Because again, it's about them coming in, taking their piece that they fought for supposedly, and they've gotten, and now you're coming in to take it. And so it's so funny how you could hear the same things you've heard from white people say when the first immigrant people showed up. You know, it just repeats the pattern over and over again. So the hatred just kind of goes downward to the next race. And so ML here is coming after the Koreans for what? Being able to come over, get this stuff, work hard, get a place, and put it in this neighborhood. And you see it all. So it's jealousy. It's jealousy.
Yeah.
And so instead of ML looking at himself, and I think ML has some sort of, I don't think he's born in this country either. He has a weird kind of accent. So I don't know if it's Bahamian or whatever it is, but he has a little bit of an accent on the edges there. He turns back and looks at Robin Harris and his other black friend there and says, "You black people are some lazy." So in a way, he's separating himself. Yes. And I find that to be so interesting in this moment. He is indicting other black people that he sees as lesser than him, even though he's sitting on the same corner with these black people. I just find this, it's incredible. Again, the incongruent aspects of a person's personality that you're like, well, you're hanging out with these motherfuckers. Who are you to judge these motherfuckers? You're in the same boat, you know? And so I don't mean that literally, obviously. I just mean like, you know, sitting on the corner. So I find that, but people have to hate something else that's successful because it reflects their unsuccessfulness back to them. So they have to vilify it instead of going, well, what can I do to achieve that?
Yeah.
Well, and I think about Spike saying, Spike, not Mookie, saying that he thinks that Sal shouldn't have to put brothers on the wall and that African Americans have to get their own businesses to do that. Right. And I also think about the movie Malcolm X, which obviously we're going to talk about soon, but that is very strong that the Black Muslims have to own their own business, control their own world. That is a very strong message. And I don't know if that's in Spike Lee's head at this moment, but like there's definitely something there.
It's got to be because we are black.
And it's like, no, there are other explanations. That might very well be one of the reasons. But Spike is happy to point out that maybe that's not the whole reason.
I think, and Andre, please obviously speak this a little more personally, but like certainly the system is geared to make it more difficult for people of color to achieve anything in this country. So that is an element of it. But it's not always necessarily the only element. And if you keep relying on that, you'll never achieve anything. You'll never achieve anything if you just keep saying it's because I'm Black or Latino or Korean or Asian or anything else, or a woman or anything else. Then you'll never achieve it. You have to fight the system in order to achieve anything, unfortunately.
It's funny. I've never, I shouldn't say never. I rarely think about how difficult the system is for me because I'm Black. It truly doesn't cross my mind. I'm so focused on the end result and the process that I don't think about who can stop me. And I usually see people who are less fortunate than I from all walks of life. But I think that, you know, when I do become aware of that possibility, like, oh, you know what, this could be harder for me, I then think about people like Spike who have created something out of nothing and become this mogul. And when you look at how he, you know, puts these characters in the film, I think in some ways Mookie to the rest of those guys, because he's the only one that has a job, right? He's the only Black guy who has a job. It's funny that he is like the one who's kind of made it. He's one getting paid, yet his job is so, you know, he's not even like really trying that hard, and he doesn't own the store. So I don't know. I think that that's a really interesting thing that when you look at how we talked about an Italian being in this black neighborhood, then a black guy going into the Italian store saying, "Put black people on the wall," and he's like, "No, get your own damn wall."
I'll tell you very quick digression, but my son is adopted. It was an open adoption, which means we knew the birth mother, and knowing her made me both way more liberal and compassionate and way more conservative, because she had a lot of issues and things were real difficult for her. She had a record. She didn't have a credit rating. She didn't have a credit card. She didn't have a bank account. And just getting through life was so hard. And we would help her out to because she had our child in her belly, part of it. But then I also watched her repeatedly make terrible decisions. Like just when she would start to get ahead, she would do something that's like, oh no, then just blow all of her money and be back where she started. And that's what I mean is like, the system was totally stacked against her in all sorts of ways that are real, that are fucked up.
Yeah.
And she's making choices that weren't helping the situation.
And
Right,
that's
because-
where my dad came in and he said, if you make a choice like this, he said, you're already going to be you're already looked at a certain way.
Yeah.
So you cannot afford to make choices like this. Now, what's sad is not a lot of people have someone to tell them, don't make these choices.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I was going to say, Andre. That's a great point you bring up, is like, okay, you look at this. Oh yeah. Made terrible decisions because they have no other way to operate other than this is what I know. And look, I mean, you see all those people who are poor or from lower income families who win the lottery, and then like 5 years later, they're back in poverty and they go through millions of the dollars, or 10 years later, they're back in poverty because they have no way to operate in a world where that functions with them, understanding how to learn the value of money and operate within that, and the restrictions they weren't taught. So that it's not inherent in them to figure it out. And the other aspect is when you have low self-esteem, you don't think you deserve that money or deserve the good stuff, so you do stuff to self-sabotage yourself. And that's a real thing. And too many people don't want to factor that into an equation. And I always think that's a detriment.
Well, and if the system has repeatedly fucked you, then fuck the system. Like, why should I participate in this thing that's going to continue to keep me down? But Sweet Dick Willie is done with this. He's done with them.
I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. You ain't gonna do a goddamn thing. Hear me? But sit y'all monkey ass on this corner. But I tell you what I'm gonna do. Hear me? I'm gonna go over there and get them Koreans some more of my money. The fuck out my way. Goddamn, it's Miller time, motherfucker.
And at this moment, I'm going, oh, wow. I'm kind of liking Sweet Dick Willie. I like, and then he walks right up to the Korean grocer and says,
hey, Kung Fu, come give me one of them damn beers, damn it.
And then he's just so rude to the guy. And what's interesting is that the Korean grocer says no more free beer.
Right.
I think has Slick Dick Willie been getting free beer, robbing this store?
I don't know about robbing the store. Maybe, I don't know. I didn't even think about it.
Well, when I say robbing, I mean stealing beer.
Oh, right. Yeah. Or were they giving him free beer to kind of like just kind of ingratiate themselves with the community?
That's what I think.
Occasional, yeah.
I think it's like you go tell your friends that this place is great, and here's some free beer. But I think he's made a habit out of it, and they're at the end of the road.
Hey, doctor, what's your name?
Eddie.
How old are you?
10.
Question: what makes Sammy run?
I said my name is Eddie.
Doctor.
And it ends up that he wants him to go to the store and buy some beer for him, and he's going to pay him 50 cents. And then up comes our group of young friends, and I love that they're super brightly colored outfits, talking to the mayor who's in that white, I think it's seersucker suit.
Yeah.
And they start to go after the mayor, or really Ahmed, Steve White, goes after the mayor.
Oh, man, you a bum, man. You're an old drunk zero, man. Now what do you got to say for yourself?
How do you feel about this at this moment?
Well, I got real angry watching this scene this time around, myself personally, because you look, when you're young, man, you don't fucking know what the world's going to give you as you get older. And when you get older, you really do feel sympathy for people who have fought and struggled and were successful for a time, but then things happened and they ended up where they ended up. And the way that's what young people do. Young people think, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Look at you sad old man. You look sitting on the stoop. And those same young people discover what really happens in life. And they're the same ones sitting on that stoop 20 or 30 years later, you know? And so to me in this moment, seeing the back and forth with them, it's such arrogance of these kids who don't even have jobs, as Mookie points out numerous times in the movie, judging a guy, and instead of understanding him or having sympathy for him as an elder of the community, they want to chastise him. And these are the same people that are trying to instigate bugging out into a fight.
Yeah.
So they're terrible. To me, they're terrible, young, aimless idiots. And all they want to do is fart around all day, instigate people, have fun, come to Sal's after it's closed. You know, they want everything the way they want it. And they don't want to have to work for it or pay any price for it. And so when I see them going after someone who has lived a life and has had kids and a wife and a job and everything like that, it frustrates the piss out of me to watch this scene for sure.
The camera pushes in on Ossie Davis. And by the way, he wrote this monologue.
Oh, wow. No surprise. Whoa. No surprise.
Unless you done stood in the door, listen to your 5 hungry children crying for bread. And you can't do a damn thing about it. Your woman standing there, you can't even look her in the eye. Unless you done that, you don't know me, my pain, my hurt, my feelings. You don't know shit.
I am so with him and moved by this performance in this moment. I think it's so powerful. And what my expectation is as an audience member is that they will hear that. You know what I mean? And the movie goes in a completely different direction.
I don't want to know your pain. I don't care to know your pain. You don't want to put yourself in this situation, man.
And what I wonder is why. Because he loses control. It's not just he goes off.
But what he says when he goes off, which I also think is interesting, there is some truth to it.
I agree.
I wouldn't stand in the doorway and listen to my 5 children go hungry. I'd be out getting a job, doing something, anything to put food in their mouth.
Now, John, to your point, I was hurting when I was watching them going after me. It really got me.
Yeah.
But Steve, you have kids. I have 3 kids. I've been in the place where I can't find enough money to go buy a bag of food from the supermarket. Wow. And I've struggled.
Yeah.
But I had to figure it out. So the choice to figure it out, or the choice to lay down and turn to the bottle, is a choice that I had to decide. And I love that Spike says it. Hey, you should have done something different. But I hate, and this is why Spike is great, that he has this guy attack someone who everyone has their own process in life. And sometimes the problems that we deal with, as in, this character here, sometimes are too much in a moment. Sometimes it's just, the straw breaks the camel's back, and maybe you have to turn to the bottle. So I think he's saying all this because that's his father or his grandfather. And I think that hurt is manifesting himself.
Yeah. I think that the way that Ahmed goes off on Damer is personal.
Yeah.
I don't think his dad's around. That's
that's fair.
I think there's something real strong happening here. And the thing too I think about is, where did we begin? We began with the cops looking at the cornermen saying, what a waste. And then we have the cornermen bitching about why they don't own the Korean grocery store or a store like it. And all they do is, as far as we know, all they do is they sit on this corner. And what does Ahmed and his friends do all day? All they do is sit.
Yeah.
And then they're yelling at this guy who because according to them, he didn't get off his ass and work to feed his kids. And I think there's just a lot here.
Yeah.
And this is what I wrote down. I wrote, Spike is judgmental of everyone.
Yeah.
Spike Spike loves everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
He loves every one of these characters.
Yeah. You're right, Steve.
Mookie in Sal's is now talking on the phone with Tina.
What do you want me to do, huh?
I want you to spend some time with me and Hector. I want you to try and make this relationship work. If not, I'd rather not be bothered with your ass.
And finally, they're trying to get him to get off the phone.
How's anybody gonna call in, Mookie?
And he hangs up, says, everybody happy? And the phone immediately rings because people are trying to make orders. And Pino's saying Mookie's making us lose business. And he takes the order. And then after taking the order, he says, how come, and he uses the N-word, are so stupid. And then this next part of the scene is amazing. This is where, we've all been kind of critical of Mookie. I think this moment, Mookie is heroic in what he does and how he handles this next thing.
What? Pino, who's your favorite basketball player?
Magic Johnson.
Who's your favorite movie star?
Eddie Murphy.
Who's your favorite rock star? Prince. You're a Prince.
Boss, Bruce.
Prince.
Bruce.
And Mookie says, and again, I'm not going to say these words, but he says,
Pino, all you ever talk about is nigga this and nigga that. And all your favorite people are so-called niggas.
The fact that Pino tries to defend this, and I mean, it's so bizarre.
It's different. Magic, Eddie, Prince are not niggas. I mean, they're not black. I mean...
Andre, you're having a strong reaction to this.
Yes, please.
This John will tell you. I was the black guy who was regarded as not really black. But you're not really black though, Andre. You're not like them. You're the exception. You're different. You kind of transcend those lines. You don't see you that way.
You're one of the good ones.
You're one of the good ones.
Oh yeah.
You're so well spoken. It's crazy how super accurate, how Spike nails how racist, prejudiced people exclude the ones that they appreciate, but just lump in the rest for no good reason other than like, oh, I like their talent. But because I appreciate their talent, they'll no longer in the generalization of the other people who I don't know, but yet degrade. And that's been my life story. I've been with white people who are like, hey, you're getting some inside info right now, who will go in on black people, tell me things that I should not even know about racist people and what they think about blacks. And they're like, but you're one of the club. And that's this. This scene is that. But I love that Spike has it in he frames it in a real exchange. It's not a fight. There's not, we've heard a lot of yelling and back and forth and F you and you're actually talking.
Yeah.
That's what's amazing to me about what Mookie's trying to do here is that he's actually trying to make Pino understand a thing.
Yeah.
By the way, Spike says that he thinks that white people, the big thing is that white people secretly want to be black people.
Yes.
Pino, deep down inside, I think you wish you were black.
Get the fuck out of here.
Laugh if you want to. Your hair is kinkier than mine.
And one of the things he references is he makes two, this is from later on after he made the film, but two Robert Zemeckis references. The first is Michael J. Fox teaching Chuck Berry how to do rock and roll.
Yeah.
And the second is Forrest Gump and Elvis, is that it's taking, black culture and imposing a white vision on it and then erasing the black influence that created the thing,
Well, a lot of people talk about that nowadays happening all over again on social media with TikTok and with Instagram, because these white influencers, usually young female influencers, they come in and they steal dances that black TikTok people, black social media people have created with way less following, have created, and then they co-opt that, which is a sense of colonization, and they do the dances. And that makes the dance famous, and they recoup the money from sponsors or whatever, and they give no credit to the black creators on TikTok and on the other platforms of social media for creating those dances. And so finally, there was such an uproar about this over the last years. TikTok finally said, if you take a dance and you don't give credit, they will suspend your account or put a strike on your account or whatever. So finally, people are rebelling. But see, this is the thing, and this is the thing that's so frustrating to me. The racism nowadays has become so casual, so somewhat accepted. And then you go, well, I made you famous with your dance. There is such a desire to become famous at the expense of anybody else. And no matter what the color is or whatever, that you see these moments happen. And this back in 1989 is a version of that, what he's taught, what they're going through here in this scene. And so you see it all the time, the co-opting, and what Spikes was inspired by, or as he says, was inspired by the co-opting of black culture by white culture all the fucking time. And yeah, absolutely. This idea that I think a majority of white people, the reason they hate black people is because they want to be black. They're jealous of their look. They're jealous of the strength. They're jealous of the the stereotypes about their sexual prowess. They're jealous of their physical abilities in sports. They're jealous of all that shit because they can't do that shit, and so it becomes a thing that permeates the white culture for some white people. Obviously, I'm not saying all, but for some white people, it permeates them and causes these kinds of moments. And the back and forth here is so brilliant because there are so many white people nowadays who still say the same thing. I know that there are GOP black people that they walk up to and they go, "You're one of the good ones. You get it, Rick Scott or whatever, Larry Scott, whatever his name is. You get it. You're one of us." And it's just like, oh my God. Or Candace O, I'm sure they walk up to Candace O and was like, "You're one of the good ones. You get it." So
it's such a bizarre position to separate out a small group out of a race and say you're not that race in order to defend your own racism. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that is such a weird psychological thing, but I think it's 100%. I think Spike nails it.
Yeah.
And then Pino comes back talking about Al Sharpton, and then on Jesse Jackson.
Keep hope alive.
That's fucked up.
Keep hope alive.
Hey, that's fucked. Don't talk about Jesse.
And then he goes into Farrakhan, and Farrakhan talking about
the so-called day when the black man will rise. We will one day, what does he say? We will one day rule the earth as we did in our glorious past.
Yeah, that's right.
What past you talking about? I mean, what did I miss?
We started civilization.
Which, Egypt is way back there. You know?
Yeah. But of course, Pino's so ignorant, he doesn't know anything about this stuff. And a lot of people who feel these racist tendencies don't do any research to discover what the actual truth is,
And we end with
Pino, fuck you, fuck your fucking pizza, and fuck Frank Sinatra.
Yeah. Well, fuck you too, and fuck Michael Jackson.
And then we go into a sequence, and I think it is the bravest sequence in the movie. It is the most theatrical, and it is the camera pushes in on one person after another as they spew what I will say are a beautifully written diatribe of racial epithets. And here's the thing, and I don't know if I should play it or not play it. I don't know, how to approach that for this podcast.
Yeah.
But I'll say one thing that's I found really interesting in hearing the filmmakers talk about this, including Spike Lee, including Ernest Dickerson. They described this sequence as fun and funny. What do you think?
Andre, you want to take this one first?
This sequence pushed it, yes, right in your face, hard angle, you can't escape. I laughed. I'm not gonna lie. I did laugh because I laughed at how far Spike went. There's no punches being pulled, and he's saying all the things that people say, the racist people say in secret.
Yeah.
He just shed a light on it all. And I was also laughing because it's stuff that we've heard. And I know we live in a much more politically correct world, but there's a lot that we've heard in whether it be in school or, you hear people joking around, and I'm like, wow, in the late 80s, he just said it. Yeah. So I did find it, I saw that they were having fun with it. I now you're saying that they thought it was fun and funny. I could see that, and I felt that, but I also felt like, wow, I wonder if he's also alluding to the fact that they're just words.
Well,
he's listing all these words off that they are just words in the end.
I think that's a great point, because I think that because the other thing he's saying is we're all the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's saying we're all racist. We all have these feelings. We're all, it actually is showing how similar these people are in a weird way. It's funny. I am certain I thought it was funny in 1989. And watching it today, I just put it the way I can only put it honestly, is that I grew up in a world where you heard racist jokes.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was part of the jokes, and that's not cool anymore. That's not just like there were fat jokes, and there were, I was thinking, I heard a whole podcast that was about Helen Keller yesterday.
Oh my God.
I suddenly flashed on all the Helen Keller jokes I knew.
Right.
And that's not cool. anymore. And it's a good thing that it's not cool anymore. Right. So I wonder how people would feel about this sequence watching it today, a young person who had not seen it before.
Yeah, I mean, it was, just to correct a little bit, it was never cool, but we accepted it more back then and whatever. And, and you see that. I mean, go back and watch those old Dean Martin celebrity roasts. You're like, oh boy.
Or Don Rickles.
Yeah, Rickles. I mean, you're like, oh, Rickles died just before the tide turned. And so in a way he got saved from the backlash there. But I remember seeing this in the theater, and I just remember my mouth going wide open because no other director had the guts to put racism so blatantly out there in their movie, right? Yeah. And I feel like only a black director and a young black director was intelligent enough and understood the pop culture zeitgeist, how it was changing to kind of focus on these ideas of racism, and that racism was becoming more and more overt in the way it was going about, and also subversively. It was subversive in the way it was being administered in our society. And so watching all the different points of view, and each one has someone they're racist against, each group.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's your great point you bring up, Steve. He's pointing out everyone is racist. And of course, Avenue Q did a song about that. Everyone was a little bit racist. And certainly there are moments here when they're just dropping everything that they're saying all this stuff. And of course, thank God for Senior Love Daddy rolling up in going, no, whoa, kind of calming everything down. So he's just saying that there is this undercurrent of racism in our entire society, and that everyone has a piece in it. It isn't just white people.
And by the way, just on the craftsmanship thing, I love each one of these shots is we're pushing in, the people are talking straight to camera, push in, and then Senior Love Daddy is the opposite because he rolls forward into camera. It's just like, that's planned out, brilliant craftsmanship.
Y'all take a chill. You need to cool that shit out. And that's the double truth, Ruth.
We're going to get a lot of truths, Ruth.
Yeah.
Sal, can you do me a favor?
That depends, Mookie.
Can you pay me now?
I can't do that. All right, if I pay you now, I won't see you tonight.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad Andre answered the question.
I'm going to go with the pattern I've seen in the film, and I would say yes.
I think there's a damn good chance that you don't see Mookie if you pay him. And I think Sal knows that. And I think Sal's probably paid him in the past and he didn't come back.
Right.
Yeah.
And I love that he goes out of frame and then Mookie comes back in to ask one more time.
Come on, Sal. I can't.
We have a top-down shot of a kid drawing in chalk on the street, and Mookie steps on the drawing and goes by. It's a classic. I'm sure it was in the trailer. It's such a classic image of the film. And we run into Radio Raheem.
Raheem! Tanner.
World.
Where you headed to?
I'm going to get a slice.
You going down to Sal's?
Word.
And then Mookie notices the two gold words on his fists. And this is a really strange filmmaking thing that I don't think quite works, which is that Spike steps back so the camera can move in and take over his POV. And it's so that it's the camera looking right at Radio Raheem as if that's Mookie's character. Mm-hmm. It doesn't quite work for me in terms of... Yeah.
Shit, this is one of my favorite scenes.
No. Let me be real clear. Okay. I love the scene.
Oh, okay.
It's Spike's move out of the way of the camera. I feel the actor or the director doing a movement that is not natural in order to get us to the shot. That's what I'm seeing. This scene, I think this is one of the key, most important scenes in the entire film.
Let me tell you the story of right hand, left hand. It's a tale of good and evil.
And John, as you said, we see those gold things on his hand, and that's love and hate, which comes from Night of the Hunter with Robert Mitchum.
Hate. It was with this hand that Cain iced his brother.
And then he holds up the love hand.
Love. These 5 fingers, they go straight to the soul of man. The right hand, the hand of love.
And then he tells this story.
One hand is always fighting the other hand.
And it's like he takes a boxing stance and he starts throwing the left punch, the hate hand.
And the left hand is kicking much ass. I mean, it looks like the right hand love is finished. But hold on, stop the presses, the right hand's coming back.
Yeah, he got the left hand on the ropes now. That's right. Yeah. Ooh, it's a devastating right, and hate is hurt. He's down. Ooh, left hand hate KO'd by love.
Let me ask, what do you think of this moment in the film before we get to what the next one?
First of all, I'm mesmerized by Spike Lee's bravery as a director to take this, not only this angle of go right to camera and just go at it. Like,
Yep.
I would not think that I could get away with that. And he not only thought he could get away with it, it's not like he's done 10 movies and now doing and then trying this. He's saying, this is my style.
Yep.
And this is what and I'm not gonna apologize. So immediately he said, hey world, this is me. If you don't like it, 2 tears in a bucket, got 2 words for you. and so from that sense, artistically, I was like, wow, this guy is bringing it. But 2, the actor, Radio Raheem, he delivers here. It's poetry. He's painting right here. And I was like, man, this is art. This is art.
Yeah, I love this scene because it makes us gives us a little more depth to Radio Raheem. So it makes us care about him even more. So when what's going to happen is going to happen, you can't forget this scene. Even when he has that incident we're going to get to with the Korean grocer, when he gets a little racist, and then when he goes into Sal's place and everything's happened with him, having this scene is such a smart way to give us a little bit of depth and complexity to Radio Raheem that we can kind of appreciate and like there's a charm here to the way he delivers this, which is of course ironic because he says love conquers hate, but then he falls prey to the hate later on in the movie. So it's just interesting to see this once again. Spike showing you these moments with these characters, as you said, Steve and Andre. Like, there's a genius to what he's doing here that can be easily missed if you're not paying attention to it, really breaking it down and seeing what he's doing here. Because he takes these little moments to kind of give you more background into these characters, so that when stuff happens, you have at least a little bit of an anchor of understanding about these characters so that you can be affected by it emotionally. It's just so genius.
I think it's amazing too. And I think part of it is that Radio Raheem up to this point has been like an iconic figure. You know what I mean? He doesn't speak. He is this person with this sound that moves through the neighborhood. And now we go from that to him talking straight at camera and the depth and the meaning of what he's saying. And you suddenly go like, oh, this is a deep person. A strange person maybe, but a really deep one. And here's what he says at the end, as we go back into a 2-shot, is he says,
if I love you, I love you. But if I hate you,
there it is, love and hate.
And there's a pause, and then Radio Raheem says, I love you, brother. And him saying I love you to Mookie, that's powerful, after this speech. And I think you're totally right, John. This is where you suddenly feel affection for this guy.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing. I've been struggling. I don't think this is a movie that's easily sort of broken down in terms of this is what it means. And I've been struggling with it, and some things click for me since our last recording. And it really starts with Demare saying, always do the right thing. And I keep going like, well, what is the right thing? How do we determine the right thing? How do we figure out the right thing? And then I think about this speech, love and hate, and that love can win. And here's the big thing I thought as I went, the problem is that in Radio Raheem's story, he leads with hate. Hate's the first punch. Yeah. And that even though love conquers all, in my experience, it's very hard to get back from hate. It's very hard to bring back love. And I also go, and so first thing I go is like, maybe do the right thing is lead with love instead of lead with hate. Maybe that's do the right thing. But then the other thought I have is if you are in a community or if you as a person have constantly been pushed down and hurt by the society at large, it's hard to keep coming back with love every time. And then I went to Smiley's holding up Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. And Martin Luther King is, no matter what they do to you, you come back with love. And Malcolm X is, hey man, someone does something to you, you have a right to defend yourself. And I go, always do the right thing, love and hate, Martin and Malcolm, that's where the movie's starting to come together in my mind.
Man, I think we talk about civil rights and the real difference between Martin Luther King and Malcolm X in that respect. And we talk about, you said earlier, guys, if Buggin comes in and says, I would really think it'd be awesome if we could see some of our people on the wall from a sense of love, how this whole thing could have been different.
Yeah.
But instead he leads with hate. I think hate is the armor some put on when they've tried love and been stabbed in the front and the back, and they have no other coping mechanism but other than to lead with hate. So the depth of character that Spike gives Radio Raheem, you do get a sense that he has had some sort of soft spot. Right there, he shows us he's capable of love, but that he's choosing to lead with hate, and that there's a sense of anger there. So I think that it shows his depth, his complexity, and I think you're right, Steve, that sometimes you are so conditioned that love is not going to work, that your anger, the jaded sense of how life has put you into this position, it permeates through everything you do. So maybe Spike has love and hate as Radio Raheem's reminder to himself. Maybe when he's starting to feel love, he led with hate. So maybe it's time for him to lead with hate. So I know I'm getting kind of like philosophical, but I really think that nothing's by accident with Spike Lee, and I think that could be part of it.
100% agree. And now, of course, we're going to see this play out in action because Radio Raheem walks into Sal's.
Slice. No service till you turn that shit off.
And again, just like he did with the racial slurs, we're like right at camera. Everything is in your face. And so Sal is yelling. And this is key, is like normally in a mix for sound, the thing you almost always put on top is dialogue. Everything else wants to be under the dialogue. And this is not mixed that way. Sal is under Fight the Power.
I can't even hear myself think.
And we've already seen Radio Raheem in these low angles with wide lenses, but now we're in a way low angle. The lens is a 10 millimeter, which is like a fisheye. And the camera is really, really tilted. Lots of ceiling in the background. It is a very invasive shot of him.
You are disturbing me. You are disturbing my customers.
And finally, Radio Raheem turns it off and says,
2 slices.
2 slices.
And I think the juxtaposition of the last scene where we love Radio Raheem and this scene, again, it's what Spike's doing throughout this entire film.
You come into Sal's, there's no music. No rap, no music, no music, no music.
And Sal is making the slice, and we hear,
Yo, put some extra mozzarella on that motherfucker and shit.
That is Spike's favorite ADR line in the film. That was added later. And it's a great line.
Extra cheese is $2.
And what I like about extra cheese is $2 is it's like the scene has reset. You know what I mean? Sal got him to turn the music off, and now he's like, okay, we're back to just doing business.
Do you guys get a sense that at this point in the movie, the heat is really starting to get like we start to feel the heat turn up on all the characters physically and emotionally?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great point.
As soon as Radio Raheem walks in, that's the foreshadowing of what's going to happen later, right? Him walking in with that loud music, the reaction, and the way he shoots Sal, as Steve pointed out, you can barely hear Daniello's dialogue. It's brilliant to show you the depth of what, and I think he's going to go back to those shots again at the end. When they're having the fight with Raheem and him coming in with the loud music again. So he's just showing you, and you're right. And this is, he's starting to slowly turn up the heat. So we're having these frustrated interactions. People start to become more frequent. Yeah.
We hear that great music, and Mookie walks from one end of the neighborhood all the way to the other in one shot. It starts off in a zoom, zooms back into a cinejib, so the camera's pulling up.
What's up, buddy? How you living, man? Oh, here come Mookie, man. Check it out. Mookie! Give me some of that. Get a job. We don't need no job, man.
And for me, this is like, here's the whole neighborhood. Here's how this is a community. By the way, as they were shooting this film, apparently this became just a part of the... People would come down to set, like started to feel that something important was happening. And I think, as I mentioned, there's a lot of artists, African-American artists living near this in Brooklyn. And so this just became, people were showing up and coming by, and the people that lived on this street were becoming more and more a part of the film. It sounds like, from everything I've heard, Spike runs a really warm and friendly set. You know,
you've never heard anything negative about Spike in terms of his sets. Anybody say negative things? So yeah, it's no surprise.
Mookie goes home.
What is this, Mookie? Another one of your patented 2-hour lunch breaks?
I wanted to come home and take a quick shower.
Which, by the way, hey, I totally get wanting a shower.
Right.
This is the one time where I go, and I could take a pretty quick shower. Like a 3-minute stop for a shower, I think is totally reasonable on a day like this. I don't think that's exactly what Mookie does.
Okay, I just don't want you to lose the one job you've been able to keep for more than a month. That's all, okay? I'm carrying you as it is.
You know what I suddenly thought about? Who is Mookie and Jade? Like, who were they before? Like, where are the parents? What has Mookie's life experience been up to this point? And I wonder, too, how long, or off and on is what I would think, has he worked for Sal?
Right.
I actually think he's worked off and on a long time.
And how many jobs has he lost, too? He says, like, the one job you've been able to keep. So has this, like, lazy behavior that we see been the thing that's cost him over and over again?
Yep. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think their parents are probably, killed in a car accident maybe or something. And so Jay and Mookie have had to kind of fend for themselves, and they have this apartment. Maybe this was their parents' apartment, so they just kind of took over the payments and whatever. But Jay makes it very clear on a number of occasions that she's carrying Mookie. So she's probably paying 3/4 of the rent, while Mookie is barely paying 1/4 of the rent, yet he's walking around like he's king shit. And he's not in any way, shape, or form. In how he's handling his business, you know, and him going up to Jay and trying to tell her what she should do or not do, and him taking a break in the middle of the day to go. I mean, these are luxuries that he's thinking he's owed for the minimal amount of work that he's doing. And so and her being the responsible person is correctly calling him out.
Don't worry about me. I always get paid.
Which is a thing he repeats a lot.
Yeah, you always get paid. What about your responsibilities, huh? Why don't you take better care of those?
And that's what I think about with Mookie, is like the contrast between I always get paid, which is his value system. As long as I get paid, then I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And what she's saying, which is take care of your responsibilities. Those are different. Like, he has responsibility to his kid, to his girlfriend, to Sal, his employer, to the customers he delivers things to. That's not where Mookie's head is. Mookie's head is, I always get paid.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and Andre, I think we both know this. I don't know, Steve, how much you know, but like, you know, that was a prevalent thing in like the rap music in the late 80s, early 90s, the idea of getting paid, got to get my money, got to get my G's, got to get all this, got to get my stacks, you know, all of that. And it was, and I know he's crazy now. We don't like Kanye now, but Kanye was one of the first rappers to come out and kind of expose that bullshit and talk about how ridiculous that bullshit was about getting paid. Got to go to when I go to a store, I got to wear a nice new jersey shirt or whatever, like all this just to convey the supposed wealth. Right. But Chris Rock has said this on numerous occasions on his bits, you know, he's talking about, hey, about people he knows, black people he knows going, you know, I take care of my kids. Motherfucker, you're supposed to take care of your kids. That's not something you should be bragging about. You're supposed to do this. But somehow there's a dissonance here between getting the money and taking care of your kids is not the same value as getting paid. And you're seeing that in Mookie here, because we find out from Tina in a little bit that he hasn't been around to see her in a week. He hasn't seen his kid in a week. What the fuck? Like, to me, it's just like, it shows a complete disconnect between what should be valued versus what is valued in a capitalist society, so to speak.
Well, and we see this continuum between Mookie and then Ahmed and his friends yelling at the mayor, the cornermen, and then the mayor. You know, it's like all of these people and all in sort of different moments and places in their lives within this continuum of this community. And then Mookie goes grab a shower, and we go into a sequence that doesn't make any sense at all. I don't think it should work, and it totally, totally works, which is Love Daddy is listing the names of musicians as we see images of the neighborhood.
We love roll call, y'all. Boogie Down Productions, Rob Bass, Dana Dane, Marley Marl, Olatunji, Chuck D, Ray Charles, EPMD.
And this came about because it was raining and they didn't have anything else to shoot. And they just came up, hey, wow. Sam Jackson, why don't you just read these names? There was no intention of cutting it as a montage. That came up in post. That's where they figured out, oh, well, I could take these names with some music and show more of the neighborhood.
Wow.
And it's amazing.
It's almost, I don't know how you feel this, Andre, but it's almost like the calm before the storm.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah. It disarmed me, took me down memory lane. It was almost, I know he's talking about all these different artists, but it was musical in its delivery and in its nature.
It also shows only actually a great actor could pull off. I'm just going to list a bunch of names and you are going to be mesmerized. One other thing about this sequence is one of the things we see as we go around the neighborhood is the cops. And every time we see them in this film, they get scarier and scarier to me. And maybe that's just part of the dread because I know where the film is going, but it just, the way Spike is building tension is powerful.
Well, and this is going to shock some people because I know there are some people out there, and I've never understood this. There's people in this film sphere who say, I should be able to just get a movie once. I should be able to just watch a movie once and get it. And it's like, sure, but the great films, the classic films, I think the directors shoot them knowing that you're going to have to watch the film multiple times to get everything they're trying to tell you. And so you may not have caught that the first time that the police look like they're more threatening as the film goes along here in this back half. But watching it again, you do. And so you understand that Spike was doing that and knew he was doing that. And so you caught it. And that speaks volumes to how great of a film director he is. Because it just drives me insane when people say, oh, I got the movie, I'm good. And it's like, you're insane. You have no idea what you're talking about.
I know the times when I've been on set and my AD's like, we got to go. We got to get the shot. We got to get the shot. And I'm like, no. There's something I want to get here. Oh, it's not going to matter anyway. Only you're going to know it. But I feel like if the director and the writer know it, they have faith that when someone's peeling back the layers, that they will somehow find it. There's that additional layer of subtext. It's a different. That's why there's some people AD and some people direct, and because Spike Lee's like, okay, no, there's depth to this that they will get when they watch it again. Where some people are like, oh, no, just as long as it makes sense, it's fine. Keep going.
I'm so glad you brought this up, Andre, and I'm really glad you're on the show for this because it's not a thing we talk about is the constant time pressure on the set and the balance because you always have to make the choice of, am I going to move on? Am I going to really fight to get this shot how I want? And that AD is always on you. Always.
Yep. Always. And I don't ever fight for time. I always fight for the shot.
Yeah.
And there's always a going at it. John has seen it on set. Yeah. I'm like, no, you're going to put the shoulder, you're going to get his shoulder with a camera on it, and we're going to get the shot. And that's it. Because directors feel like every shot makes the movie. So whereas his job is to get in on time, but my job is to deliver the best film possible.
Well, and sometimes it's a really small detail. Like we talked about the shot looking up at Rosie through the ice water. Like that took more time, And the movie would totally be exactly the same without that shot, except it wouldn't be.
Right.
Yeah.
This next scene is remarkable. First of all, it's all in one shot. And as we said, as a lot of these scenes with this film are, and it's not showy, the camera is just going to push in on Sal and Pino sitting at a table in front of the window. And this is where it's like, is this tough on the cameraman or the dolly guy or pulling focus? No, those things aren't that tough for the shot. Those actors have to deliver every fucking moment exactly perfect, beautifully. And man, do they. And I love, by the way, that Pino calls his dad Daddy. I think that's a really good bit of writing. He says,
Daddy, I've been thinking, maybe we should sell this place. Get out while we're still ahead and alive.
And alive.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is that's the cops later on are going to say, hey, Sal, when are you getting out of here?
And maybe we could try something different.
Well, what am I going to do? That's all I know. What am I doing? I've been here 25 years. Where am I going?
And then Pino says,
I'm sick of niggas.
Watch Danny Aiello's face. Because Sal doesn't say that word. I don't think. I mean, he's going to later in the movie. But that is not a normal word for him to say. And this next, it's got to be rough. I mean, it's a weird thing for an actor to do, to say horrible, hateful, disgusting things. And John Turturro is a great actor. And he says,
It's like I come to work. It's Planet of the Apes. I don't like being around them, the animals.
and the thing is, Sal loves a lot of people in this community.
Yeah.
He might not love Bugging Out and Radio Raheem, but he does care about a lot of people. And his son, who he has raised, is calling them animals.
Why you got so much anger in you?
And what Pino says is that his friends laugh at him for working here.
There it is.
Yeah.
It's that bullshit, toxic manhood nonsense and cultural nonsense manhood stuff that's the truth of it. That's what frustrates him. Pino has such a weak center as a human being that his friends giving him shit about him working in a neighborhood where he's making money, he's paying for his stuff. They have to find a way to make him look inferior to them. So they make fun of that. And Sal does a great job of deconstructing that and says to them,
Do your friends put money in your pocket, Pino? Food on your table? They pay your rent, the roof over your head? Huh? They're not your friends.
and he's trying to tell him, but when you're young, you don't know that, especially when you're young and you think you know everything and you think your friends are the center of your universe. To you, it's you can't see the bigger picture, you know?
And how old would you say Sal and Pino and Vito, how old do you think they all are in this movie? Because he's not exactly talking to his 15-year-old son.
No, he isn't. No.
So I will tell you something that was upsetting to me is I looked up how old Danny Aiello was when they shot this movie.
Yeah.
56. So he's 3 years older than me. And I found that really upsetting. I think Pino's 25 at least. And maybe Vito is 18 or 19 or 20. That's my gut.
Much older than me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a kid.
And I'll tell you this, the honest truth, that this scene hit me really hard this time around because, I mean, I had these talks with my dad, not about black people, obviously, but about like the perception of the job, right? And, you know, I tried to get my dad to move us out of Virginia for so long, and he wouldn't do it for his own reasons, and my mom and whatever. And my dad worked, you know, like it's not an easy job being a banquet waiter. I mean, that's not a prideful job, but when you're a person of that age, and he wanted to accomplish more, and unfortunately, for his own reasons and other reasons, he wasn't able to get to where he wanted to get to. And so at times I would look down on my father. No lie. I would look down on my father and the things he did. And we'd have conversations like this. And you know, and in the end, I didn't understand. And now, of course, obviously, as I got older, I understood. And we had a great conversation about everything before he passed. But like at the time, I had those conversations with him. And I'm seeing a little bit of myself in Pino as he's having this conversation with his dad, because you think you know better. You young people always think they know better. That's kind of the unfortunate truth. And sometimes they do. I'm not going to say they don't always, but sometimes they do. But most of the time they don't, because they haven't been out in that world. And certainly Pino has lived a sheltered life in his community, you know, working with his dad, making money, paying his bills. He has no idea what it's like to actually be out there in the world and have to survive on his own and make money on his own to put food on his table. That's the difference. But yet he wants to tell Sal what to do. He's almost looking down on his own father. Like, just get out of here. We could just do this. Why don't we just do this? Why do you have to stay here? And by extension, because he's embarrassed for his dad. There's an extension there. And so he's embarrassed for the family that they have to feed black people in order to pay their rent and do whatever. And for him, he sees it as, because of his friend's influence, he sees it as something to be ashamed of.
That's great what you just said, and I think I have so much compassion for Sal. Not that Sal is perfect, because Sal is not perfect, but like the weight that he carries, he's carrying the weight of his two sons.
Mm-hmm.
The mayor comes in and he gives him money probably every day. You know, I bet there's other people in the community that he's helped out in one way or another. And Mookie is not the best employee, but he keeps him. I think Sal's carrying a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think part of what he gets back is the love, because he says,
I sat in this one day. I watched these little kids get old. And I seen the old people get older. Yeah, sure, some of them don't like us, but most of them do. I mean, for Christ's sake, Pino, they grew up on my food. On my food. And I'm very proud of that.
Am I wrong? Does he say at the end of that speech, and I take great pride in that?
Yes. Yeah.
I feel like he says it, and I think that's an important piece of dialogue because Spike doesn't just end it on, they grew up on my food. He's telling his son, hey, this is my sense of pride.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of why he carries the load, which interesting, again, by the way, we haven't seen a mom or a wife for Sal.
Points.
You know,
And he
he's
mentioned-
carrying a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that sense of pride in the fact that the whole neighborhood, the whole block grew up on the food is not something he's ready just to get rid of because his friends are laughing at him, because your friends are teasing him. So I thought that was another fascinating point.
That's powerful. And I know, and Pino doesn't get it.
Look, what I'm trying to say, son, is Sal's famous pizzeria is here to stay. I'm sorry. I'm your father and I love you. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is.
You know what I wish? I wish Sal would fire Pino. Pino, you don't have to work here. Like, go get another job.
It's your dad. Your dad can't. That's tough for a father to fire his son.
I mean, I don't really mean fire him, but let him go.
Well, I think he is saying that, though, Steve, in coded words. I wonder if you agree, Andre. I think he's saying this is staying. So it's your choice whether you want to work here anymore or not. He doesn't say that, but I think it's implied by him saying it's not going anywhere. I'm not moving. This is the deal. And I think he's essentially telling Pino, you can accept it or you can move the fuck on.
And then right at this moment, because Spike isn't going to let us just sit in a moment, up comes Smiley.
Get out.
And Pino is pissed.
Get the fuck out of here, man! Get the fuck out of here!
Sal is embarrassed. And then here is what Ernst Dickerson and Spike Lee say, and I cannot believe it, but they say that this is true, is that every moment that happens from this point forward is improvised. That is supposed to be the end of the scene.
What?
And that John Turturro decided to get up and go outside.
Wow.
That's what and I'm just going like, and Andre, you know this, when you do a oneer, it is so stressful because you have to get the whole thing. People don't tend to like improvise on a shot like this. And he gets up and he goes outside, and apparently, again, this is what I understand that they said, is that the cornermen, those actors, are actually just outside there. And when John Turturro starts yelling, all of them start improvising back.
Well, no surprise with Robin Harris.
Yeah.
Yeah, no surprise at all.
Wow. And Danny Aiello's like reaction, his pain at what his son is doing at this moment. And it's so, and the thing too is, I think about the fact that Smiley isn't a character that was in the initial script.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that if part of what happens at the end is powered by John Turturro going outside and yelling at Smiley. And the fact that that's all improvised is amazing to me.
Get a fucking job, man! Why don't you get a fucking job, man? Go to fucking work! Fuck you, man! Get out, man! Get out! See what I'm saying?
And that they just kept rolling, you know? Spike didn't say cut.
Always roll. You just, because you never know what the actors are going to bring, especially when you have that type of talent. There are times when actors make writers look so great if the director gives the actor the freedom to just run with it. And this is a classic case where you have, you know, a masterclass in keep acting until you hear cut.
Yep.
And staying with it. And they advance the story.
Yeah.
Because then Sal gets up and goes outside.
Right, which is great.
And maybe it's possible that Spike said, hey, Danny, why don't you go up and go outside too? Make you know, he might have done that. And I'll tell you, and Andre, I'm so glad you said that, because it comes up when I'm teaching directing all the time. Because student directors, the last line happens, and at the period they go cut. And it's like, no, don't say cut. You take a breath, you count to 3, and then you say cut. And then I tell the cinematographer, when the director says cut, don't cut. Right. You take a breath and you count and then you cut, because there's that moment after. And that's where the whole scene is, in that moment after sometimes.
I love this because if it wasn't, obviously Smiley coming in, the back and forth, but the fact that it extends and escalates is great, because later on in the film, Smiley becomes the third man in this trio of people who come in to threaten Sal. And so having this interaction with Pino and with Sal, because remember, Sal tries to offer him money to appease him there at the end of this back and forth as he tells Pino to go inside. Smiley refuses the money. And so, here is Sal trying to smooth over the situation and can't because he's late to react to his son. And so it's such an interesting point you bring up, Steve, because I was watching this time around, I'm thinking to myself, why is he so late to? As soon as his son gets up, he should have gotten up, and he knew what Pino was going to do and put it back. But the fact that it was improvised, I would have Danielle as an actor was just watching John Turturro as an actor do his thing, and then maybe Spike says, "Hey, why don't you go up after him or whatever?" And then we have the back and forth, the interaction. So to me, now to know that it was improvised gives me even more reason to kind of appreciate what Daniela was doing in this moment.
And artistically, I love staying inside the diner too.
Yeah, right. Because it makes you feel helpless as an audience member because you're like, no, I want to see what's happening. And you're just like, you can't see what's happening. You're stuck here, son. You're like, no. And so it's brilliant. Yeah.
And again, this isn't one of the great tracking shots of all time, like in Goodfellas, like in Touch of Evil, like in The Player. It's not one of those. This is a over 4 minute long shot.
Yeah.
Wow. That is a lot of a shot. And I think, think of everything that we've built up here. We have Bugging Out angry about No Brothers on the Wall. Radio Raheem has come in blasting that music, and Sal felt disrespectful for that. Smiley now said, fuck you to Pino.
Right.
Pino's level of anger and racism is building. We've seen conflicts with the Korean grocers. We've seen conflicts between DeMare and the younger people, and Mookie is taking a shower. And with all of that tension building, I think this is a good time to end part 2 of our exploration of Do the Right Thing. Are we going to finish this up in part 3? I don't know, but what I will say is I'm enjoying this conversation so much, and for that, really have to thank Andre for coming on as our guest. This has been absolutely fantastic.
Anytime. I love being here. I love this movie, and your guys' insight and all of the astute little things you pick up on. Man, really great stuff.
Thank you, Andre.
Well, thank you. As always, we'd love to hear what you think of Do the Right Thing. You can follow us on Facebook. You can go on Twitter and look for the Cine_Files, the Cine-Files podcast on Instagram. Subscribe to the show at all the subscription places. Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify. I think you should subscribe at all of them. Why not? And definitely, please leave your reviews on Apple Podcasts. It really helps the show. You can also rate the show on Spotify. You can even rate the show on Audible if you listen to it there. You can buy or stream Do the Right Thing along with every other movie we've ever reviewed at Cine-Files.net. And you can support the show on patreon.com/the Cine-Files, where every week John and I record Cine-Files shorts on all sorts of topics, most of them of your choosing. And if you want to find me, you can follow me at SR Morris on Twitter, SR Morris1 on Instagram. And if you like Star Trek, you can listen to Enterprise Incidents, where we just had for the 4th time Ralph Sinensky, the 98-year-old director of the original series, come on to talk about one of the episodes that he directed. John, how would people find you?
You can always find me at The Roca Says on Twitter and on Instagram and TikTok, and then The Outlaw Nation on Twitch, doing a lot more stuff on Twitch there as well. The John and Wendy show is live on 3 p.m. PT on Fridays. And then my YouTube channel, youtube.com/John Roca Says, for all the other content I do. And then my 2 other podcasts, The Geek Buddies and The Cine-Files. No, The Top 10. There you go. The Geek Buddies and The Top 10. That is all out there for you all to enjoy.
You can always plug the Cine-Files on the Cine-Files. Why not? Andre, if people wanted to find you on social media or see some of your great work, how would they go about doing that?
Well, you could definitely find me on Instagram, on IG, at Andre Gordon Official. You can find me on TikTok at Andre Gordon Official. You can find me on Facebook at Andre Gordon Official, or just search Andre Gordon. My YouTube is /4 Horsemen Studios. 4 Horsemen Studios. And you can find some of my great work and some of my not so great work on Amazon and Netflix. Just search up Andre Gordon and all my stuff should come up.
Thank you. This has been absolutely fantastic. And we will be back next week to continue, possibly conclude, our discussion of Do the Right Thing right here on the Cine-Files.